Hi, welcome to the Aftermath Tales. Ready for a new story? Very well, let's begin.
My name is Daria Sullivan, and this is the story of how my parents' betrayal nearly destroyed everything I believed about love, and how I orchestrated the most satisfying revenge that taught them the true price of their choices. I'm 28, work in marketing, and had been with Jake Gibbs for 3 years when this nightmare began. Jake's a software developer, 29, and we were planning our dream wedding for October. We were completely in love and thought we had the perfect supportive families. My dad, Tom, 55, is a contractor, charming, hardworking, devoted to our family. My mom, Iris, 52, works as a project coordinator and had always been the practical, reliable center of our household. Jake's dad, Greg, 56, is a successful architect, distinguished, confident, seemingly the perfect family man. His wife, Linda, 54, is a sweet librarian who devoted her life to raising Jake and his sister Elena. Everything seemed perfect until one fateful dinner changed everything. We arranged for both sets of parents to meet at Marcello's, an upscale Italian restaurant, to celebrate our engagement and start planning the wedding together. The evening started beautifully. Everyone was getting along, sharing stories, and I was relieved that our families meshed so well. Then my mother dropped the bomb that would destroy everything. "Greg Gibbs," she said suddenly, her fork halfway to her tiramisu. "I thought you looked familiar. You used to work at Morrison and Associates, didn't you? About 15 years ago?" Greg's eyes widened with recognition. "Iris? Iris Bennett? You were the project coordinator on the Riverside development." "That's me." Mom smiled with an animation I hadn't seen in years. Though it's Iris Sullivan now, obviously. What followed was an hour-long trip down memory lane that dominated the entire dinner. Mom and Greg reminisced about their old workplace, sharing inside jokes and memories while the rest of us sat there like spectators at their private reunion. "Remember the Henderson project when the client kept changing specifications?" Mom laughed. "And you had to redo the timeline 17 times," Greg finished, grinning. "I brought you that terrible coffee from the machine during those late nights." They were completely lost in their own world, finishing each other's sentences, laughing at shared memories, while Dad, Linda, Jake, and I exchanged increasingly uncomfortable glances. When we finally left the restaurant, Jake and I walked to our car in uneasy silence. "That was intense," Jake said carefully. "They certainly had a lot to catch up on," I replied, trying to dismiss the uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. "Did you notice how they kept finishing each other's sentences? And the way they kept looking at each other?" I had noticed, but I didn't want to acknowledge what that might mean. How naive we were. Over the following months, as wedding planning intensified, Mom and Greg began spending an alarming amount of time together. What started as innocent wedding coordination quickly became something much more personal and intensive. Mom transformed before our eyes. She started dressing differently, more stylish, more youthful. New clothes appeared, expensive haircuts, a sudden interest in fitness. She glowed with an energy I hadn't seen since I was a child. "Your mother's looking great lately," Dad mentioned one afternoon. "All this wedding planning seems to agree with her." The wedding planning meetings became elaborate social occasions happening 3 or 4 times a week, often lasting hours and extending into dinner. What should have been simple vendor consultations turned into extended gatherings. "We need to make sure the color palette works with the venue's existing decor," Mom would explain when I questioned why all 4 parents needed to attend every appointment. "And Greg has such a good eye for design." But Linda stopped attending these meetings altogether, claiming she was too busy with work. The truth was becoming increasingly obvious to everyone except Jake and me, who were too trusting to see what was happening. The phone calls started next. Daily conversations between Mom and Greg about vendor coordination and logistics that lasted for hours. I'd try calling Mom and she'd be unavailable, calling back later to explain she'd been dealing with wedding coordination issues with Greg. Dad began working later hours, giving Mom more freedom during the day. At Jake's house, Linda grew increasingly frustrated with Greg's distraction and frequent absences. "I feel like I'm competing with his phone for his attention," Linda confided to Jake. Elena noticed the change too. "Dad's been acting weird," she told me during one of our coffee dates. "He's completely distracted at family dinners, but mention anything about your wedding and suddenly he's totally engaged. Since when does Dad have strong opinions about table linens? The signs were everywhere, but we were too busy and too trusting to connect the dots. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday late afternoon in August. Jake and I were meeting with our florist when his phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen. "Hey sis," Jake answered, and I watched his face change from casual greeting to alarm. "What do you mean Mom's at your apartment crying?" he asked. "Elena, slow down. What happened?" My stomach dropped as the pieces started falling into place. "We're coming over right now," Jake said. "Don't let her leave until we get there." The drive to Elena's apartment felt endless. When we arrived, we found Linda sitting on Elena's couch, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Mom, what happened?" Jake asked, kneeling beside her chair. Linda looked up at us with devastation in her eyes. "I wasn't snooping," she said quietly. "I've never been the kind of wife who goes through her husband's things." "We know, Mom," Elena said soothingly. "Just tell us what happened." "Your father left his laptop open on the kitchen table this earlier. He never does that, he's always so careful. But he got a call from a client about an urgent project issue and had to rush to the office, leaving everything behind." Linda paused, taking a shaky breath. There was an email thread open. Between him and Iris. I saw my name mentioned, so I read it. And then I read more. My stomach dropped to the floor. "What kind of emails?" Linda looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. Part sympathy, part apology, part devastation. "They're having an affair, Daria. 4 months. But it's worse than that. They're planning to leave us." The room seemed to tilt around me. "What do you mean?" "I printed some of them," Linda said, reaching into her purse with trembling hands. "I know I shouldn't have, but I needed proof." She handed me several pages. With shaking hands, I began to read. From Iris Sullivan, marketing@gmail.com. To G. Gibbs, architect@gmail.com. Subject, yesterday. Greg. I can't stop thinking about being alone with you yesterday. I know this is complicated, but I can't pretend anymore that these feelings aren't real. The past 15 years feel like a lifetime of wondering, what if? All my love, Iris. From G. Gibbs, architect@gmail.com. To Iris Sullivan, marketing@gmail.com. Subject, yesterday. My dearest Iris, I feel the same way. What we have is special. It's what we should have had 15 years ago. I know the situation is complicated with our families, but we deserve to be happy. I can't wait until we can be together openly. Forever yours, Greg. From Iris Sullivan, marketing@gmail.com. To G. Gibbs, architect@gmail.com. Subject, our future. I'm ready to tell Tom everything. I can't keep living this lie. After Daria's wedding, we should both come clean and start our lives together properly. I know it will be hard on everyone, but we've wasted enough time already. Iris. The emails revealed their affair in devastating detail, but there was more. They were planning to wait until after our October wedding to reveal everything, using our celebration as their cover while they planned their betrayal. I handed the papers to Jake, feeling nauseous. He read them silently, his face growing paler with each line. "Where's Dad now?" Jake asked his mother. I confronted him when he came back from the office this evening. He didn't deny it. He packed a bag and left. Said he needed time to think, but I know he's gone to her. "We need to tell my dad," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Jake and I split up to handle our respective family crises. I raced to my parents' house, where I found Dad in his workshop, unaware that his world was about to collapse. The conversation was devastating. Dad was completely blindsided. Mom arrived home an hour later to find us both waiting for her, and the confrontation that followed was brutal. Somehow she knew what is going on. "How long?" Dad asked quietly when Mom finally admitted everything. 3 months, she said, unable to meet his eyes. 3 months of lies. 3 months of coming home to me after being with him. Dad replied. I could hear his heart breaking through his voice. "Tom, I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. And you chose to keep happening it every day for 3 months. Dad said. I watched my parents' marriage dissolve in real time. The woman I'd thought I knew, practical, reliable, honest, had been living a complete lie. What about our wedding? I asked. Were you planning to keep up this charade through our wedding? Mom's face crumpled. We were going to tell everyone afterward. We didn't want to ruin your day. Ruin my day? I stood up, shaking with rage. You think finding out my mother is a cheater and a liar would ruin my day? You think I want a wedding built on lies? And you're telling me that you did not want to ruin my day? Help me make this make sense. Daria, please. No. I cut her off. Just no. You've destroyed everything. Our family, Jake's family, and for what? Some fantasy about what might have been 15 years ago. I replied, trying to control my anger. Meanwhile, Jake was having a similar confrontation with his father, Greg, who had returned home to find Linda packing her bags. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, tears, and the complete dissolution of both our families. The October wedding we'd spent months planning became impossible. How could we celebrate love while watching our parents destroy theirs? We lost our venue deposits, had to cancel vendors, and watched our dream day crumble along with our families. The stress was overwhelming, and both Jake and I were struggling to figure out how to move forward. As both families went through messy divorce proceedings, Jake and I were left trying to rebuild our wedding plans from scratch. We'd managed to reschedule for December, hoping things would settle down by then. But the worst was yet to come. 6 weeks after the discovery, Jake and I were reviewing new venue options when both our phones rang simultaneously. That's weird, I said, seeing Mom's name on my screen while Jake's phone showed his father's name. Should we answer? Jake asked warily. We'd barely spoken to either of them since the confrontations. Might as well get it over with, I sighed. I put my phone on speaker and Jake did the same. Daria, we need to talk. Mom's voice filled our living room, but she sounded different, more confident than she had in weeks. Jacob, this is important. Greg's voice overlapped, equally serious. We're here, I said carefully. What's going on? Greg and I have been discussing our situation, Mom began, and there's something we need to address about your engagement. My stomach dropped. What about our engagement? We've realized there's a problem, Greg said, his tone becoming clinical. If Iris and I get married, you two will become step-siblings. And frankly, we can't go through with our wedding knowing that we'd be creating a family where step-siblings are married to each other. The silence in our apartment was deafening. I'm sorry, what? I finally managed. It's going to look completely inappropriate, Mom continued matter-of-factly. People will think there's something unseemly about step-siblings being married, even if you got together first. The family dynamics would be impossible to explain. Are you out of your mind? I exploded. We've been together for 3 years. We were engaged before you two even reconnected. That's not the point, Daria, Mom said impatiently. What matters is how it will look once Greg and I are married. We can't have people whispering about inappropriate family relationships at our wedding or for the rest of our lives. You want to talk about inappropriate relationships? Jake's voice was deadly quiet. Don't take that tone with me, Jacob, Greg snapped. We're trying to handle this maturely. Maturely? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You had an affair, destroyed 2 marriages, and now you want us to break up so you can have your perfect wedding? We think it would be best, Mom said firmly, if you and Jake called off your engagement. End the relationship entirely. Greg and I have waited 15 years to be together. We deserve our chance at happiness without this complication hanging over us. A complication? Jake shot to his feet. You're calling our relationship a complication? We have a right to be happy too, Greg said defensively. Iris and I found each other again after all these years. We can't let our children's poor timing ruin our chance at real love. Poor timing. I stood up too, shaking with rage. We've been together for 3 years. Look, Greg's voice took on a patronizing tone. You're both young. You'll find other people. You have plenty of time to fall in love again. Iris and I have already wasted 15 years. We can't sacrifice our happiness for a relationship that might not even last. So we're supposed to break up so you can get married? I asked, incredulous. We're asking you to be reasonable, Mom said. To think about the family as a whole instead of just yourselves. The family? Jake laughed bitterly. You mean the family you destroyed? What is wrong with you? If you insist on staying together, Greg's voice was cold with threat, then we'll have to call off our wedding. And if we can't be together because of your selfishness, then don't expect us to be part of your lives going forward. You're threatening to abandon us if we don't break up to make your affair more convenient? I asked, my voice eerily calm. We're asking you to make a sacrifice for the greater good, Mom said. For the family. Choose, Greg said flatly. Your relationship or your family. The line went quiet, waiting for our response. In that silence, something crystallized in my mind, a plan so perfect, so strategically beautiful, that I almost smiled. I already chose, I said steadily. I chose the family that actually loves me over the people who think I should sacrifice my happiness for their convenience. This conversation is over, Greg said flatly. Yes, it is, Jake agreed. And so is any relationship we might have had with either of you. They hung up, leaving us standing in stunned silence. Did that really just happen? Jake asked. They just asked us to break up so they can get married without feeling awkward about the family dynamics, I said, sinking back onto the couch. That's when the idea hit me. Brilliant, strategic, and absolutely perfect. Jake, I said slowly, I have an idea. Tell me, Jake said, sitting down beside me. What if we don't just refuse to break up? What if we do the exact opposite of what they want? Jake stared at me. What do you mean? They want us to break up so they can have their perfect wedding without any awkward family dynamics. But what if we get married first? Like, way before they do. We beat them to the altar, and then when they get married, we're not becoming step-siblings, we're already a married couple whose parents happen to get together later. That's actually brilliant. It completely flips the narrative. Exactly. Instead of being step-siblings who are married, we become a married couple whose parents later got together. The timing changes everything. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking it through. You know what? I love it. Let's do it. Let's get married on our terms and show them what real commitment looks like. We spent the next few days planning what would become the most beautiful act of rebellion either of us had ever committed. We called our friend Marcus, who had recently become ordained online, and asked if he could perform a ceremony in 2 weeks. We booked a small chapel downtown, not the grand church we'd originally planned, but an intimate space with gorgeous stained glass windows that felt perfect for what we wanted. For our guest list, we invited only the people who had truly supported us through this nightmare. Dad, Linda, Elena, and her boyfriend, my grandmother, Jake's uncle who'd been like a second father to him, and 6 of our closest friends who had been rocks of stability throughout the family drama. Dad was confused but supportive when I told him about our plans. You want to get married next Saturday? As in 8 days from now. We're tired of letting other people's drama control our timeline, I explained. We love each other, we want to be married, and we're not going to let anyone else dictate our lives. Dad's face broke into the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in months. You know what? I think that's exactly the right attitude. Those two want to play games with your happiness? Show them what real commitment looks like. I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle. Linda was thrilled when Jake told her. I think it's wonderful. A real declaration that your love comes first, no matter what anyone else wants. And honestly, I love that you're not letting them manipulate you. Elena was equally supportive. I can't believe you're doing this, but I'm here for it. Dad's been trying to call me all week to get me to talk sense into you two, and I told him the only people who need sense talked into them are him and Iris. My grandmother, who'd been quietly horrified by Mom's behavior, was delighted. Good for you, sweetheart. Don't let anyone else write your love story. Our wedding day was perfect in every way that mattered. I found a simple but elegant ivory dress at a boutique. Not the elaborate gown I'd originally planned, but something that felt absolutely right for who we were and what we were doing. The ceremony was held in the small chapel with afternoon light streaming through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the wooden pews. Dad walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes but a huge grin on his face. You look beautiful, sweetheart. And you're doing exactly the right thing. Linda sat in the front row, beaming with joy and pride. She'd spent the morning helping me get ready, doing my hair while telling me how proud she was of both of us. "This is what real love looks like," she whispered as she hugged me before the ceremony. "Love that doesn't wait for other people's permission or approval." Marcus officiated with warmth and humor, acknowledging the circumstances without dwelling on the drama. Jake and Daria have shown us today that love doesn't wait for permission or perfect timing. They've chosen to celebrate their commitment regardless of external circumstances, and that choice is a testament to the strength of their relationship. Our vows were simple but powerful. "I choose you today, tomorrow, and every day after," I said to Jake. "Not because anyone else wants us together or apart, but because you are my choice, my partner, my home." "I promise to put us first, always," Jake replied. "To build our life on truth, loyalty, and the kind of love that doesn't need to hurt others to be real." There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. The reception was an intimate dinner at Dad's house, transformed with flowers and candles into something magical. Linda had helped Dad cook all afternoon. It was the first time I'd seen either of them truly happy since the discoveries about our parents. "To new beginnings," Dad toasted. "To a couple who refused to let other people's chaos define their love story." "To family," Linda added, "the kind that's chosen with intention and built on respect." Elena stood up with her own glass. "To my new sister-in-law, who's braver than both our parents combined. And to my brother, who found a woman worth fighting for." That evening, I crafted what might have been the most strategically perfect social media announcement in wedding history. I posted the most beautiful photos from our day, each one radiating pure joy and authentic happiness. The caption was carefully crafted. "Couldn't wait another day to marry my best friend." Sometimes you just know it's right and don't want to wait for perfect circumstances or anyone else's timeline. We're so grateful for the family and friends who celebrated with us today, the people who put love first and showed us what real support looks like. Introducing the newest Mr. and Mrs. Gibbs. Hashtag married life, hashtag love wins, hashtag our choice, hashtag real family. I tagged several mutual friends who I knew would share the photos widely and posted at peak social media hours for maximum visibility. The response was instantaneous and overwhelming. Within hours, our post had hundreds of likes and comments. "OMG, you're married. You two look so happy. What a beautiful surprise. Congratulations. I love that you didn't wait for anyone else's approval. This is the most romantic thing ever. True love doesn't wait. You both look absolutely radiant. Smart move getting married on your own terms. The love in these photos is everything. Congratulations. You deserve all the happiness." The photos and announcements spread through our social networks like wildfire. The narrative was impossible to spin negatively. We looked like a young couple, so in love they couldn't wait to start their lives together. The response to our wedding was instantaneous and overwhelming. Within hours, our post had hundreds of likes and comments celebrating our happiness. But not everyone was pleased. At 11:47 p.m. that same night, both my phone and Jake's phone rang simultaneously. "Oh no," I said, seeing Mom's name on my screen while Jake's phone displayed his father's name. "Should we answer?" Jake asked, though we both knew we had to. I put my phone on speaker and Jake did the same. "What the hell did you do?" Mom's voice exploded through our living room, pure rage crackling through the speaker. "Jake, how could you?" Greg's voice overlapped, equally furious. "We got married," I said simply. "Like we planned to. You sabotaged us." Mom shrieked. "We explicitly told you this would ruin everything." "You told us to break up," Jake replied calmly. "We chose not to. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Greg's voice was shaking with rage. "We can't get married now. Everyone will see that our stepchildren are married to each other." "That was the point," I said steadily. "You selfish, vindictive little," Mom started. "Choose your next words very carefully," I interrupted, my voice ice cold. "We gave up everything for this relationship," Greg shouted. "And you've destroyed it. It's your problem, not ours." "You destroyed your own relationships," Jake shot back. "We just refused to destroy ours for your convenience." "This isn't over." Mom's voice was deadly quiet. "You'll regret this." "We already don't," I replied. They hung up, leaving us in stunned silence. Well, Jake said after a moment. I guess they saw the photos. Good, I said, feeling strangely calm. Let them be furious. They made their choice, and we made ours. Over the following weeks, it became clear that our strategy had worked perfectly. Some called it petty revenge. Others say it's genius. Greg and Iris were trapped by their own demands. They couldn't get married without creating the exact family dynamic they'd claimed to want to avoid, and they couldn't blame us publicly without revealing their own selfishness. Meanwhile, the response to our wedding continued to be universally positive. People saw exactly what they were supposed to see, a couple so in love they couldn't wait another day, surrounded by family who supported them unconditionally. Elena told us that Greg and Iris were miserable, their relationship strained by the impossibility of their situation. They'd gotten what they thought they wanted, each other, but discovered that their happiness depended on controlling everyone else's lives too. Dad keeps ranting about how you ruined everything, Elena reported during one of our coffee dates. But when I asked him what exactly you ruined, he couldn't give me a straight answer. Just kept saying you were selfish and vindictive. Good, I said. Let him stew in it. 2 months after our wedding, life gave us an unexpected gift that would make our strategic victory even sweeter. I discovered I was pregnant. Are you serious? Jake asked when I showed him the positive test. We're having a baby? We're having a baby, I confirmed, and he picked me up and spun me around our kitchen, both of us laughing and crying. We decided to share the news with our chosen family first, Dad and Linda, who had become our closest supporters and were slowly building their own friendship through shared experience. A grandchild, Dad said when we told him, his eyes filling with tears of joy. This is the best news I've had all year. Linda was equally thrilled. I can't wait to spoil this baby. And you know what? This baby is going to grow up knowing what real love looks like because of the example you two set. The timing was perfect in more ways than one. When we announced the pregnancy on social media a few weeks later, it completed the narrative beautifully. We were a couple so committed to our future together that we'd gotten married quickly and were now building a family. We planned a dinner at Dad's house to celebrate my pregnancy. Elena was back from a work conference, so it would be all of us together, our chosen family, celebrating our growing family. The celebration dinner was everything I'd hoped it would be. We were halfway through dessert, discussing baby names and nursery plans, when both my phone and Jake's phone rang simultaneously. The sound cut through our happy conversation like a knife, and I felt my stomach drop as I saw Mom's name on my screen while Jake's phone displayed his father's name. We hadn't spoken to them since their furious call on our wedding night months ago. Oh no, I said, my good mood evaporating instantly. Not tonight. Should we answer? Jake asked reluctantly. Dad's face had hardened. Put them on speaker, he said grimly. If they're going to break months of silence to interrupt our family dinner, we should all hear what they have to say. I accepted Mom's call and put it on speaker. Jake did the same. Daria? We need to talk. Mom's voice filled the dining room, but this time she sounded different. Less rage, more desperation. Jacob, this is important. Greg's voice overlapped, equally strained. We're having dinner, I said carefully. What's so urgent? We just heard from Elena's coworker that you're pregnant, Mom said, and I could hear the accusation in her voice. Is it true? Elena looked mortified. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I ran into Sarah from my old job at the grocery store. She asked about you guys, and I was so excited about the baby that I mentioned it without thinking. I didn't know she knew Dad through work connections. So it's true. Greg's voice was strained. You're having a baby? The silence at our dinner table was profound. Dad slowly set down his fork, his face cycling through understanding and what looked like protective anger. Linda's eyes went wide, and Elena looked guilty but also defiant. Yes, I said clearly. I'm pregnant. 12 weeks. So? This changes everything, Mom said, and now I could hear something like panic in her voice. How exactly does our baby change anything for you? Jake asked coldly. Don't you see? Greg's voice was rising. Now there's going to be a child involved. Our grandchild. This makes the whole situation even more impossible. We're never going to be able to get married now, Mom said, and she sounded close to tears. How do we explain to people that we're both grandparents to the same baby, but We can't be together because our children are married to each other. You don't, I said simply. Because it's none of your business and none of their business. Of course it's our business. Greg exploded. This affects our entire future. Dad couldn't stay quiet anymore. Greg, he said, his voice deadly calm, they've been married for 4 months. How exactly does their baby affect your future? Tom, you don't understand, Mom said desperately. This makes everything so much more complicated. The only thing I understand, Linda said quietly but with steel in her voice, is that you're calling to complain about these two having a baby, as if that's somehow their fault or your problem. We had our whole lives planned out, Greg said, and now he sounded defeated. Iris and I were going to start over, be happy together. But now you're realizing that your happiness shouldn't depend on controlling other people's lives. Elena spoke up, her voice incredulous. This is your grandchild we're talking about, Dad. Our grandchild, Mom corrected, her voice softer now. Both of ours. Same difference, Elena snapped. And the fact that you're more worried about how it looks than excited about a baby tells us everything we need to know about your priorities. This is our grandchild you're talking about, Mom said, switching tactics and making her voice softer. Of course we care. We need to figure out how to handle the situation. Handle the situation? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. You mean handle the fact that your affair has consequences you didn't anticipate? We never meant for it to get this complicated, Greg said weakly. You meant for it to be simple, Jake said. You wanted us to break up so you could have your perfect wedding and pretend you weren't the kind of people who destroy families for their own happiness. But real life isn't that convenient. What do you want from us? Mom asked, and for the first time, she sounded truly defeated. I looked around the table at our chosen family, Dad, who'd supported us unconditionally, Linda, who'd become like a second mother to me, Elena, who'd chosen us over her father's manipulation. Nothing, I said finally. We wanted nothing from you months ago, and we want nothing from you now. We have everything we need right here. But the baby, Mom started. The baby will be surrounded by people who love them unconditionally, I said, my voice steady and calm. People who put family first instead of their own convenience. You're really going to keep us out of this child's life? Greg asked. You're keeping yourselves out, Jake said simply. You made that choice when you asked us to break up. You made it again when you called us selfish for getting married. And you're making it now by calling to complain about our pregnancy instead of congratulating us. The phones were quiet for a long moment. We could try to work something out, Mom said desperately. Some kind of arrangement. No. I interrupted. We're done being manipulated by you. We're done having our happiness held hostage by your poor choices. We're building our family with people who actually want to be part of it. We hung up both phones and sat in the sudden silence. Well, Dad said after a moment, raising his wine glass, that was the most satisfying conversation I've heard all year. Linda was wiping tears from her eyes, but she was smiling. I can't believe they called to blame you for ruining their wedding by getting married. You know what the best part is? I said, feeling lighter than I had in months. They can't get married now without looking ridiculous. They're trapped by their own selfishness. Elena raised her glass. To the bravest couple I know. And to the luckiest baby who's going to have the most amazing parents and chosen grandparents. Mom and Greg never did get married. The scandal of their affair, combined with the awkwardness of becoming parents to an already married couple, proved too much for them. They tried to make it work for a few more months, but their relationship crumbled under the weight of their own poor choices. Greg moved to another city for work 6 months later. Mom tried to rebuild her life, but the damage to her reputation and relationships was too extensive. She ended up moving to Florida to be near her sister, effectively removing herself from our lives entirely. Meanwhile, we thrived. We bought a small house and prepared for our baby. Elena became one of our closest supporters, eventually choosing to go no contact with Greg entirely. Dad started dating again and was happier than he'd been in years. Linda thrived in her independence, going back to school full-time and discovering interests she'd put aside during her marriage. Our daughter Hope was born the following spring, surrounded by people who genuinely loved her. Dad cried when he held her for the first time. Linda had knitted dozens of blankets and booties. Elena had already declared herself the favorite aunt. About a year after Hope's birth, Mom reached out through a mutual friend, wanting to rebuild our relationship and meet her granddaughter. The message came with conditions. Of course, we need to acknowledge that everyone made mistakes and move past the drama. Jake and I discussed it over dinner while Hope slept peacefully in her bassinet. "What do you think?" he asked. I looked at our beautiful daughter, then at the photos on our mantle, our wedding day, surrounded by people who'd chosen to support us unconditionally. Dad teaching Jake how to use his power tools. Linda helping me set up the nursery. Elena holding Hope for the first time. "I think," I said slowly, "that we already have all the family we need. No regrets." Jake asked, "About the wedding? About choosing us over their manipulation? About building this life with people who actually love us?" I shook my head. Not a single one. We never responded to Mom's message. We'd built something beautiful from the ashes of their betrayal. A family based on choice, love, and genuine support rather than obligation and manipulation. Hope is now 3, and she's surrounded by chosen grandparents who adore her. Dad teaches her how to use kid-safe tools in his workshop. Linda reads her stories every week. Elena takes her on ant adventures to the zoo and children's museums. Our family isn't the one we were born into, it's the one we chose. And that choice, that refusal to let other people's selfishness control our lives, turned out to be the best decision we ever made.
If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Don't forget to follow for more content just like this. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.